Hello, everybody, once again. The next session is New Opportunities Developing the North-South Transport Corridor. As I'm sure you're well aware, there's enormous potential for the Gulf region in developing the trading and investment routes that run north-south from the Silk Road. These would link Dubai to Moscow and the newly founded Eurasian Economic Union, linking a group of markets of around 350 million people. But what will it take to turn that into a key economic corridor over the next decade? Well, it's a pleasure for me to be joined today by His Excellency Jamal Majid bin Thania, who's Vice Chairman of DP World. Thank you very much indeed for joining us today. I would like to begin by putting this into context. We're here today talking about Silk Roads, those ancient routes that were traded for thousands of years. But of course, the New World and America changed all of that and changed the perspective. Even 15 years ago, DP World was looking at a very different world in terms of the trading routes that you were seeing. Can you talk to me a little bit about how things have shifted, what it looked like 15 years ago, and where it's gone from there?
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Ladies and gentlemen, I am honored to be with you this morning to discuss and debate the new Silk Road and where DP World also fits within this equation. The world has evolved totally different for the last 15 years when it comes to the transportation, to the way we do business, and to our memory that most of the countries, when it comes to their hubs and to their port operations, it has shifted from a governmental controlled ports to a private operation. And this because of so many factors that has influenced this decision. The EU, for example, they have made a serious reforms in their economy where the government will only be a regulatory body rather than operator. With the emergence of the global port operations, and I recall at that time, Dubai was sitting in the right place with its operation at Port Rashid and Jebel Ali, and we formed the two ports under Dubai Ports Authority, which was Jebel Ali Port and Port Rashid. It was the first step for us to move to the global market. And if you look at the global platform again, you will see Rotterdam, you will see Hong Kong, Singapore, and northern China's port, such as Shanghai, Ningbo, and the rest. But the world for the last 15 years, ladies and gentlemen, has evolved into a totally different transportation dynamics. The dynamics has changed. Traditionally, most of the services into the Middle East used to be a West-East dominated transportation method. It was a West-East. But only three things happened that has changed the whole of the dynamics, a historic moment that the world did not realize the Chinese factor, first of all. Coupled by another fact, which is the trade barriers. Trade barriers is a critical element into the movement of cargo and goods from a block to another block. Transportation cost is another factor. The ocean freight tariff is the third factor. It's only when we have seen these three factors and we put it together, coupled by the emergence of China, the whole world transportation dynamics has changed. So the matured and saturated economies in the West and America, they realize that now it makes sense for them to manufacture goods patented in the United States, but made in China. Why I have to make in China? Cost is much cheaper than the United States. It's much cheaper than the EU bloc. So companies, big names, the super brands, it makes sense for them today to make a suit cut or a shoes to cut in the EU, put it in one container, put it in the port of Genoa, send the same container to China, stitch it, assemble it, send it back to EU, and send it back to the United States. It makes a lot of sense from the financial point of view. But again, when you look at the dynamics which has changed, why this is happening, this has influenced the whole of the economy to follow the others. I am, as a trader today, if I don't have the competitive edge, I cannot just sit around with my manufacturing capabilities in the EU or in the United States while I see the rest. Manufacturing the same goods, but at a much lower cost. So everybody looked at China, and let me now look at the Chinese market seriously. And this is what happened, ladies and gentlemen, that traditionally we used to see MacBook and iPhones, et cetera, coming from the Silicon Valley, but it's no longer the case. The Chinese factor is a reality today. Again, if you want to look at the reasons, I have outlined the reasons why this has happened. Trade barriers, number one, transportation cost, and the tariff. During the same period, when we used to see the West-East, because, ladies and gentlemen, no matter what you do, there are two major trade lanes, Trans-Pacific, connecting China and Asia with the United States, and then you have what's called the East-West corridor, which is connecting Europe with Asia. That is predominantly the major trading blocks. Of course, there is the transatlantic, but it takes a smaller volume than the one I mentioned earlier. Dubai and the Middle East sit in the middle of the East-West trade. And in the past, we used to see the trade moving from the West to East. Mid of 90s, early the millennium, we have seen the shift that the goods moving from East to West. But if you look at the global platform, you will see a vacuum between the Eastern Bloc and the Western Bloc. The Middle East, with its efficiency, such as Dubai and the United Arab Emirates, has fulfilled this vacuum. There was a necessity for a modern and efficient platform to fulfill this requirement to connect the East and West, and it was the United Arab Emirates and the other efficient countries here. Again, if you look at where the demand will come from, the demand will come from emerging market. One would ask himself a question, why should I invest in a saturated market? Although the FDIs today shows that still the saturated economies in the West and the United States has up to 70% of the FDIs. But again, looking at the future, emerging market will play a major role into the growth. During the same period, ladies and gentlemen, there was also thoughts that has come up with regard to the new roads, which is the Silk Road. Many talked about the Silk Road. Today we have the normal ocean corridor that connects the East and West. But again, the Silk Road as a project and as a necessity because of the emergence of the CIS with its development and with its ambitions to connect the East and West has come also a reality.
Let me just ask you a little bit about the CIS and actually Dubai's decision, really, to invest there and to look there. What do you see the significance of the CIS for Dubai? And tell me a little bit about how you imagine that trading partnership will continue.
Dubai traditionally has made a great achievement in the Middle East with regard to the emerging market. CIS is a great market that is foreseen to be the future. Dubai has the know-how and has the knowledge and has the product and the will to serve the CIS. We have made a strategic decision along with Kazakhstan to look into the introduction of the free zones on Kyrgyz, and we have taken an advisory role there. We also looked at certain logistic projects, such as the port of Aktau, but this is a part of a much bigger vision that we have envisaged earlier. It is to connect the Western China with the EU. The rail that connects Shanghai with Rotterdam today, ladies and gentlemen, is a reality. It did not happen in the past. But again, it is a matter of time and it's a matter of cost. As I mentioned earlier, that no matter what you do in the transportation costs and the transportation of the goods, you need to look at the three elements which I have outlined before, which is the trade barriers, transportation cost, and the tariff. And I believe that the CIS will play a major role into connecting Western China with the EU bloc. As a matter of fact, there is no, from the logistic perspective, there is no impediment for such a movement of cargo today to move from China to EU.
Let's look as well at another route, which is all interconnected, because of course it's not just one road, it's almost like a web of routes. And that's the one from Dubai to Moscow, that northern route. I know that you are involved in some joint ventures in Russia. How important do you see that route north?
The Dubai and the Russian strategies, along with the CIS, this is the debate about the east-west trade versus the north-south. From the statistics, from the numbers, and from the way we have seen the world in the past, the trade has only dominated from east to west and vice versa. But we have seen a little north-south. North-south is yet to see a greater future when it comes to Russia, CIS, the Middle East, and southern hemisphere, which is Africa and the other countries. And this is the debate which we have established earlier, that where we have to look for the growth in the future. Shall we look for the growth between the East and West, or shall we consider the North-South? In my own opinion, that the challenge will only come with the North-South trade versus East and West. East-West, ladies and gentlemen, is a saturated economy. And for this reason, if you look at the index for the last 5 years, from the year 2008 to 2015, and you don't compare 2000 and 2008 because that was a global boom triggered by the flow of money in the global market. But if you take another view between 2008 and to 2015, the global economy has become extremely volatile. Exactly the way you read the stock market, you will be reading the global economy. It goes up and down, ups and down, and no one can see a real or will have a real view and a vision more than 6 to 1 years. But if you look at during the same period, if you look at the emerging market growth story, it will tell you a totally different story than the East-West trade. And where we sit in Dubai and where we see the future in the emerging market. That's where the real challenges, that's where we will see the real development that will take place between CIS, Russia, and Southern Hemisphere. And Dubai and the United Arab Emirates will play a major role into connecting the North and South. And I don't want to elaborate that we do believe in hubbing today. Dubai is a major hub when it comes to the airline, when it comes to the cargo bound to the CIS and to the North and South. Dubai is a hub when it comes to either on the shipping line or on the air freight, connecting the African countries with the CIS, with the Russian, with the Chinese, etc. And once I've been asked why Dubai and the United Arab Emirates playing a major role into it. If you look at our statistics today in Jebel Ali, and you compare it with the population, ladies and gentlemen, it will not make sense whatsoever about the cargo handling. We're handling 15.2 million containers a year. It is by large, I mean, it's a huge number that is not consistent with the population of 7.5 million in the United Arab Emirates. Because we in Dubai and United Arab Emirates, we don't believe that we are serving 7.5 million population here. We are serving over 2 billion of population here. And this is how Dubai, as an economic and a hub platform, has been created when it comes to the airlines, to the ports, to the trading, to any infrastructure you see it here. And that's why how Dubai and United Arab Emirates will play a major role into the development of the future of the trade in the CIS and also the North-South trade.
Now, I do want to leave a little bit of time for questions. I would like to take some questions from the room. Do we have any questions? There is some podium there that you can go and ask a question at if there are any questions from the room. If not, I do have some questions that have come to us here on the iPad. I mean, this is a question actually about tough economic times. DP World obviously had to get through the 2008-2009 global crisis. Some of the CIS countries also obviously affected very adversely by a low oil price. The question is, what do you do in times of economic crisis, and do you see opportunities there?
During the economic crisis, and if you look at the world trade, we have only seen a drop in the trade for one single year, which was the 2009. But we noticed that the global trade has continued to grow after 2010 until 2015. The oil prices, of course, is totally different subject. It's a fundamental element or it will impact the consumer and the industrial nations. But the oil prices, ladies and gentlemen, it was totally unforeseen factor. When it has dropped to below 60, most of the experts in the industry told us that during the year 2015, the oil prices will be stabilized at the rate of 86. And they were talking about 80, but contrary to whatever we heard it from them, that it only gives us a proof that no one can see the impact and the reality of the oil prices. It has dropped where it is today, about 30 to 28. But again, the oil prices, it can be seen from totally different angle as you are seeing one coin from different side. It's good for the consumer and the industrial nation, but on the other side, many countries around the world do rely heavily on the oil as their main income to sustain an efficient economy. Russia, Nigeria, other Middle East countries. So the impact on the lower oil prices, it will have impact on a lower appetite for the purchasing power and other capacities, which will be much less. So basically, it can be construed as a vicious circle when it comes to the low oil prices. It's good news for some, good news for the industrial nations and the consumer, but on a long term, it's not something sustainable. The oil prices has to be restored as a reasonable level for the global economy to continue growing again.
We have another question in here about how you see the potential for Iran. Is this something that the trade routes that historically ran through there, do you see the potential for Iran to open up and those trade routes to be used again?
With regard to Iran and the Middle East, the geopolitical, the recent slowdown in the trade and the global trade, of course, the geopolitical has played a major role into the slowdown. But the world also was anticipating that because of the lifting sanctions on Iran, it will stimulate the economy in the region. And without any doubt that a big country with a population over 80 million, it will definitely have an impact on the economy and the region. The inter-countries trade between the UAE and the neighbor countries has played a major role into the development of the overall economy and the region. As you know, Dubai, although it's Dubai and the United Arab Emirates, although it's a small country, but it's a small pool of efficiency, which sits in an ocean of, I wouldn't say that, an ocean of inefficiencies. But again, because we are playing a major role to be ahead of the rest, the region will need a platform, a modern platform, strong financial systems and processes in order to bring a lot of value and prosperity in the region. And I think such opening up of markets in Iran and the rest, of course, it will have a major impact on the region prosperity and economy.
Well, that's a very positive note to end on. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. It's been a pleasure, Your Excellency Jamal Majid bin Thanai, Vice Chairman of DP World. Thank you very much indeed for your time.
Thank you very much. Shukran, Sayyidat.